Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at The Reign of Supermen. If you haven't guessed, I've kind of been building up to covering these books. This is the top 5 selling books of 1993. This one being number 1. It came in the white bag like this. It was packaged with a single card, not a lot of stuff in it compared to the Death of issue. And this is the cover that was inside the black bag. There was also a standard edition for all of these, and each one of these had their own, die cut cover to reveal the new Superman. So before I dive in, I want to give a little deep cut on my own personal opinions of Superman. I am someone that grew up with the Chris Reeve movies, and they have their flaws, but I love those movies. I think they capture Superman, and when I really think of Superman, it's those movies from my childhood that I, kind of hold up the candle to. Having said that, I was never a big Superman comic collector. Even when I finally got into comics, I was much more of a Marvel person. Even when the Michael Keaton Batman came out, while I did pick up some Batman around that time, it never hooked me into just reading it month after month after month after month after month. But when they said they were going to kill Superman, I was actually kind of in a comics limbo break at that point. And I heard the news that they were going to kill him, and I went back to the comic shop and I jumped on. And I stayed on, not just through the death and funeral for a friend, but all the way through this Reign of Superman and even a little further. I think what they did with this weekly format, where they put these little triangles in the corner for reading order, which I've got these out of order actually, was pretty brilliant in a lot of ways, but also kind of damaging to the long-term readership, because you were essentially forcing fans to stay on a weekly book indefinitely. It's one thing the Batman Nightfall series was weekly between 2 titles, and just during the summer, those titles came out twice a month. And then after that, they went just back down to coming out once a month. So you weren't asking people to stick to a weekly book for forever and ever. And they've been doing this for a couple of years. I want to say I've seen the triangles dated back to 91, maybe. So each year it started over. The numbering of the triangles started over. And even each title would have its own creative team, but the storylines kind of move from book to book. It still happens on these, although because we're going to have different characters, in theory, you could have probably just picked one that you liked and stuck with it. I don't know how good of a reading experience that would have been, but I guess you could have. So this is not my original set that I bought when they came out. I sold those at some point in the early 2000s. Thought if I ever revisited the story, I would just buy a trade. But when it hit the 30th anniversary for the Death of story in 2022, I wanted my kids to read it with me. So I went out and I got a local shop that he hooks me up, and he gave me the whole set pretty cheap from the Death through Reign of Superman. And I was able to read it with them in a weekly basis. So, I did it just like this. And I started as best I could determine when the storyline started in the fall of 92. And we read it all the way through the summer of 93. 1 issue a week. And when I did that, if you follow me on Instagram, I would actually post each book each week and give the kid take on it. I kind of reviewed some of that, so I'm going to talk some in this video about their takes on it. But mostly, I just wanted them to experience it how I experienced it week to week. They did already know about the Cyborg turning heel, though. Unfortunately, that didn't get to be the big surprise that it was for me. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in with this first issue. This is Adventures of Superman 500, and it is the top seller of 1993. This is a sticker, too, by the way. If you're wondering how they got this, hazy look, you could peel this off. In fact, I think I might have another copy where it is peeled off, but I didn't feel like looking for it. This did not outsell the black cover, I don't believe, but you can find this book in this white bag cover pretty much anywhere. I mean, the death of Superman was such a major success and news story that retailers heavily ordered on this book. And it picks up where Funeral for a Friend left off, which was Paul Kent was on a hospital gurney, having a heart attack and dying. And so I guess I should say, even though that's how that story ended, Funeral for a Friend, there was about a 2-month gap of no Superman comics, at least not these monthly comics. There was like a Lex Luthor Metropolis miniseries, and there was a Legacy of Superman book that kind of dealt with like Superman adjacent heroes and stuff. There was no main Superman Action Comics, Man of Steel. None of that was coming out at the time for 2 months. So it's kind of weird that it picks up pretty much at that exact same point when, there was that break. But it does. And this issue is written by Jerry Ordway. The majority of the issue is written by Jerry Ordway, and Tom Grummett is the artist. And I believe this is Tom Grummett's first issue on Adventures of Superman. He'll be the regular artist going forward on that title, but it is the last issue of Jerry Ordway's run on Superman. He actually goes over to Image and does Wildstar, which I have a video on. Go check that out. So Paul Kent on the gurney, he's kind of in the limbo afterlife, and he sees Clark, rips his clothes off to reveal Superman. And Paul is like, it's time to go. I have to go with them. You have a different path. And he's, ushered off by these road figures. Meanwhile, you got a lot of drama going on in the waiting room. Like Lois shows up. This gangbuster storyline. That was kind of Jerry Ordway's character, I guess, was gangbuster. So we're going to wrap some stuff up with him. And none of this really applies because I don't think we even see Gangbuster again after this. Maybe he got a miniseries or something. I don't know. He played somewhat of a role during the Funeral for a Friend story and was in that Legacy of Superman one-shot, but for the most part, this is kind of the end of Gangbuster. This is the interesting stuff, though, of this issue. So now Paul Kent's going to kind of go through his life, and it shows him in I think they make this the Korean War. So he's like in the Korean War, and, as he goes through, he finds, I think it's his brother. So some pretty crazy imagery. Another soldier shows up, and of course it's not really, he realizes that it's not what's going on, because he was in Korea. He's in Korea in the war, but then he ends up on his farm. So he shows up, and then he's like, I'm on the farm, and it's like their house. More stuff going on with WGBS News. We got Cat Grant getting sexually harassed by this guy, Morgan Edge, I think is his name. He's obviously like pinched her butt or slapped her there or something. But then she like cries on his shoulder. I don't remember what was going on there. I think this was more just like news about Superman being dead in the prisons and stuff. We've got some stuff with Jimmy. All of that's just like side drama. This is the main thing, is we follow Paul Kent through his life, sort of, as he falls into this pit with these demons. So now he's in a pseudo hell. And I don't know if these hell characters come from some other like DC thing, or if they just appear in this. I'm unfamiliar with them if they are like regular appearing DC, like a DC Mephisto of sorts. So they're throwing him in limbo. I mean, the art in this is good. This is a good page. All the splash pages are pretty good. That last page with the demon sitting on the throne of skulls. The art in this is solid, and it's easy to follow. And the Paul Kent story going after, and okay, yeah, this Eternity Light character. So I don't know about her either, but this is a good page. Look at these vertical panels of him like falling through space-time. It's a hard book to keep open. Square bound, wants to flop open. Eventually he makes his way to this, Kryptonian temple, and they're taking Clark in a Kryptonian funeral march. But Paul feels like it's wrong, that it's, not his time to go. So he jumps in and tries to, disrupt it. And it turns out that, no, they aren't really Kryptonians. There you got Gangbuster again. Ignore that part. You could skip over that stuff. So Clark kind of wakes up, and then they start fighting aliens or demons that aren't really Kryptonian, right? And they fight him off. And mostly I think he's fighting him off because he says, he wants to send Paul back. And Paul wants him to come back. And then this Kryptonian, which is, he's saying is Jor-El, but it's not really Jor-El. And he makes a shovel materialize and hits him with it. I mean, Tom Grummett is solid. That's a cool page. And now we start seeing the flat line. Beep, 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 beep. Come back. And Paul wakes up. And he says, I brought him back. We both did. I brought him back. And of course they think he's just delusional, waking up from having this heart attack and coming out of it. But you've got the beep, beep there. And you've got the beep, beep over the Superman's tomb. And then Lois is flying home. What does she see? Streaking through the sky. And as soon as she gets back, there starts being reports immediately. Reports of seeing Superman. And there's a hole knocked out of the side of his tomb. And the body is gone. Now, this I thought was kind of weak. I didn't do a video on Funeral for a Friend, but in the Funeral for a Friend story, Cadmus tunnels into the tomb and takes the body. And that will play a big part. My kids thought like, okay, Cadmus is gonna do something to bring him back. But Lois finds out about it, and her and the Newsboy Legion go to Cadmus and basically get the body back, and they seal it back up. So now we're doing that again. The body's missing again. So, it's important that Cadmus got access to his body for that time, but now it's like, oh, now we're doing it again. This is the second time his body's gone missing. I didn't love that. All right, these next few pages are just going to introduce the other books, and they have the creative teams of the other books. So this one, you've got John Bogdanov on art, as there's this character, the White Rabbit, who's more or less like a female kingpin in a way. And she has these guns. I think they call them like Toastmasters. And there's like some not great stereotypical gang war stuff going on, giving them these guns. But anyway, this character comes up out of the rubble. He's like, I gotta stop Doomsday. And then you got like some kind of like street mugger with this character coming down, this Superman looking character with these like energy beams right there. And he is very brutal and burns just the basic mugger. Then you've got Cadmus with Guardian. And this is back to Tom Grummett. So Tom Grummett's going to do this book with... and the Newsboy Legion helps this person break out. And as we see, don't ever call me Superboy. So this is Connor Kent. I guess this is his first appearance. Of course, he doesn't go by Connor Kent for some time, but this is the Superboy of the 90s that has a pretty strong fan base to this day. And let's see, is that the last one? Nope, I forgot. How could I forget this one? back at the memorial. Now we got the Dan Jurgens pages. This is the spot where Superman died. So some weird things, too, I want to point out. In the grand scheme of things, this whole storyline, from the death to the return to the actual return of Superman, is only supposed to be, according to the writers, about 8 weeks. Now, it takes, almost a year of Superman stories to tell, but it's only about 8 weeks, which is funny to me that they rush up the spot where Superman died to throw a plaque up, when I would think they would still be just cleaning up all the damage after 8 weeks, and also building the statue of him that quick in the tomb. Some of that stuff doesn't make sense in the timeline. But whatever, we're just rolling with it. This is a weekly book. I think they should have made the timeline be about a year in real time for this story to take place, because I think it would have added more weight to the overall impact to the DC universe for there not to be Superman for that long. But when you say it only took about 8 weeks, that's just 2 months. So he died and came back in 2 months. That's hardly enough time to mourn and notice his loss. Anyway, let's move on to, making sure we're doing the right order here. We've got 12, 13, 14. Okay. So this will be the next one, Action Comics. These are the collector's editions. They do have a standard edition out there too with a different cover that's not die cut. The kids really like all of these die cut covers and open them up. Let's see. Roger Stern is the writer, Jackson Geis and Dennis Rodier is the inker. If you don't follow Dennis Rodier on Instagram, check him out. He does a lot of stuff of where it shows him inking and stuff. It's pretty cool. And Jackson Geis, or Butch Geis, is on Instagram as well too. They post pretty frequently. Starts out in the Antarctic, and they are going to a Fortress of Solitude where this energy thing is going on, and you see this energy figure wake up, and it's being infused with these memories of the battle with Doomsday, and it's confused and remembering that. So he flies off to Metropolis. The energy being flies off to Metropolis. He's not really seen. I guess he's kind of invisible. Maybe he's like an infrared. And he comes and he sees the body of Superman. And you see the statue heating up. The old homeless lady sees it going on, and it scares her, obviously. And then now we've got a solid figure Superman. Something to note here is you cannot actually see inside the casket right there. You just see his body standing in front of the top open part. He puts on the cape. He's in a black costume. He puts on the cape and makes an exit. So they don't really show him making the exit. That's worth noting. Bibbo shows up quite a bit throughout this story. He's more or less a side character. And if you'll remember, Bibbo... Oh, well, that was in Funeral for a Friend, too. So that does play a part. So in Funeral for a Friend, immediately following Superman, laying there dead after the Battle of Doomsday, they had this, nuclear defibrillator or something. It wasn't nuclear, but it was super high impact energy that Bibbo is the one that went over there and did a defibrillator on Superman. So to honor Superman, he's going to wear his Superman cosplay. All right, we're back at the Fortress of Solitude. Now this guy is in here and he looks an awful lot like Superman, except his eyes are sensitive to light. And now he has these energy blasts and stuff. And this kind of black stripe running down the side. And he's watching the news. And he's like, I need to get back out there. I don't care if I'm not at my 100% strength yet. Got a pretty neat pinup. Maybe not the best one. It's at the tomb. And they're calling this one the last son of Krypton. For now. So he dons like the S-Shield, and he heads out to Metropolis. And immediately he is a lot more brutal and tough on the criminals than Superman ever was. I mean, he is willing to kill. And even like the people he saves are like, whoa, you killed that dude. Supergirl comes in. She's got like a relationship going on with Lex. She's not Kara L either. She's something called the Matrix. She's kind of like a shapeshifter thing. I don't really know her full origin, but she really just takes this form in honor of Superman. Why she's with this Lex Luthor II, who really is Lex Luthor, but he's in a clone body and calls himself his son and tries to pass himself off as altruistic. And she falls for it. And Butch Geist does a good job on this book, too. All the art in this is pretty solid. And it's different styles enough to keep you interested. Lois goes, to meet the new Superman. And he does know. He knows some of the history between them. And he says, like, I am back, but I have changed. And, like, he's more cold. And, kind of like, I'm just Superman now. And I just have the job as Superman. And he looks like Superman. He sounds like Superman. She says she still feels like there's something off. But she's wondering. She wants it to be him. And he flies off. And that's the introduction to the last son of Krypton. And this one is the Man of Steel. With John Bogdanov. So I will say, John Bogdanov, I did not love his art when I was young. I've come to really appreciate it more than I ever did, and I really like it now. He reminds me of Walt Simonson, which is funny because Louise Simonson is the writer of this title. It has, like I said, it has like Walt Simonson characteristics to it, but it's still easy to identify as Bogdanov individually. But it's kind of like they're cut from a similar cloth. So this John Henry Irons, he's in, I forget what they call it. I want to say they call it Suicide Slum, which is terrible, of Metropolis. Basically like low-income neighborhood of Metropolis. So he's there at like some community center, trying to talk to these kids. I think one of them's name is Keith, and he was actually playing a part in the book before the death of Superman. They're walking home, and one of the kids gets shot by these gang guys as they have these like crazy weapons. So he chases after him. What is up with their hair? Like his hair is like spikes coming out of his head. And he goes all hero and like jumps at the car and stuff. And this is the guy we saw come out of the rubble saying he needed to fight Doomsday. And he tries to get the guns from the car, or get the gun from the guy. And he does. I guess he breaks it. And they ram into the wall and mess up I guess he bloodies up his back. That's a lot of blood. But he does get the gun. And he knows something about the gun. So while he's recovering in the hospital from that, he talks about how he met Superman once. How he was falling, he saved like a construction worker on a crew he was on from falling. But then after, as he was saving him, the hook came undone and he started to fall. And Superman just happened to be flying by and they had a connection. And so they illustrate this as if maybe this is some kind of connection that would cause them to maybe like Superman, the embodiment of Superman, to transfer to him. And then there's the fight with Doomsday happens, and he gets stuck under some rubble. And when he mentions like how he woke up, he was confused and disoriented and felt like he was Superman or needed to help Superman. But they're leaning on to like he has a past that's connected to those weapons that they were shooting. And he goes in the cellar of the building and he forges a mask. And there's your first shot of Steel. That's a pretty cool shot. I mean, he even signed the page. I'm sure that was used on trading cards and promotional material and stuff. But I like the panel layout. I mean, he'll go to these 9-panel grids. It's almost like Iron Man suiting up. And so these guys were coming after him, the guys he attacked in the car. And, you know, they're going to throw, like, what are they, Molotov cocktails into the boiler room that he was building his suit, and sets the building on fire. And he goes and rescues his neighbor, because he's in his Iron Man suit now. He goes and rescues his neighbor, who's kind of like this hippy-dippy chick. Saves her, and she's like, she knows who he is. She knows he's John Henry, but she also is like, he's Superman. Like, he has been taken over by the spirit of Superman. It's pretty cool. Pin up there. He's got Lois. Lois wears some funny pants in this book. And this guy Jeb shows up. And I've seen some issues with Jeb predating the death of Superman. I guess he was this guy that was trying to come in and kind of be like a love triangle character with Lois and Clark. And he's coming in to move in because Clark has gone missing, and he's missing long enough to be pronounced dead at this point. And that was an interesting part of Funeral for a Friend, where Lois and Ma and Pa Kent and Lana Lang, the people that knew Clark was Superman, kind of got together and decided together that they needed to let the world mourn Superman and they would mourn Clark individually and not reveal the secret, because how that would impact them and so forth is not what Clark would have wanted. Which was a pretty neat exploration of the concept of what happens when Superman dies and his secret identity dies too. Anyhow, Lex Luthor, you know, he's watching. I like the color use on this one as well. Casting this large shadow. Kind of a funny face there. He's watching these Supermen appear, and he's like, every day there's a new Superman showing up. So pretty much his storyline is going to be, at least for these first couple issues, is tracking down these weapons. And each issue is going to reveal a little bit more about the weapon. See how his mouth is open right here? My 11-year-old then, he's 12 now, but like during the story was like, how does he move his mouth in that mask? And he doesn't know who Destro is from G.I. Joe. So I was like, well, it's got to like Destro. And he's like, who's that? I'm like, oh, never mind. Just, it's comic books. He's made it some kind of like malleable metal to his mouth. That's, you just got to roll with it. Weird coloring on his eyes right there. Like, why are they just like huge brown pupils? Anyway, he fires out these like railroad spikes. Pins the guy to the wall. Here's our White Rabbit character. And she's got him in her sights of one of these Toastmaster guns. She's the one controlling these weapons and putting them on the streets and stuff. And here's Paul Kent. He's waking up and seeing another Superman. It can't be. And Lex Luthor, can it? That's that guy there. I guess this one had the same thing. All right, here's our Cyborg Superman. This one is just the Superman title. This one's by Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding. Dan Jurgens writes and does the layouts and rough pencils. I mean, they give Breeding the credit as the finisher. So I wonder how much Dan Jurgens just roughly laid this out quickly, and Breeding did, you know, the heavy lifting. This is a pretty good one. They got this picture, and it's like, you know, half his face is in shadow. Looks a lot like him. Looks a lot like him. And I think they're just recounting a story of, this is Star Labs, I believe, not Cadmus. So this is Star Labs, where they've taken the Doomsday body to examine it. Jurgens has some pretty wild layouts. This is a wild layout. with his head right there. Is he a hologram right there? Barking out orders to him? That's a weird placement of that. These guys were in the Death of Superman stuff. They tried to fight Doomsday too. So I find the build-up in this, maybe the build-up was more for the characters in the story than the reader itself, because you already know what that's going to look like. Plus, you've already seen all the promotional material. But that's a neat, like, they're looking at him in infrared, and you see, like, this part is organic, the yellowy, and then the other part is this metal, so it's confusing to him. Guardian does show up there, but this isn't Cadmus, this is Star Labs. And there's your first big reveal in page. And he's like, Superman? And he's like, I am, but it's me. I am Superman. And he wants to know where the body of Doomsday is. He sees it, and he just goes down there, and his arm opens up, which is pretty cool. And he, like, R2-D2's this control panel here. The kids loved this pinup. They said it was epic. And it is pretty cool the way his, like, hand is dislocated, and it drop. Not only does the hand drop down, but it's even got like stuff coming out of the fingers and connected to it. It is a pretty cool pinup. So he gets the Doomsday body, and he binds it up, and he takes it out into space and attaches it to an asteroid. And just pushes it out into space. Even my kids were questioning, why didn't he push it towards the sun? And I said, that is a good question. Because they wouldn't be able to bring Doomsday back, I guess, if they did that. But he just pushes it out. And because he says he looks to see like where it can go on like a course that's just like not going to hit anything. That it's just going out, straight out into space. Yeah, the only answer I could give to like why didn't he push it towards the sun is that they wouldn't be able to bring Doomsday back if they did that. That's a crazy panel. This eye like that. He's able to convince Lois too that maybe there's parts of him, like memories are there of their relationship. I mean, he's kind of vague about it, not 100%, but enough to convince her. They go visit this scientist that was friends with Superman, whose name is escaping me right off the bat. Maybe it says his name. Hamilton. Professor Hamilton. Who he had the crazy defibrillator thing that I was talking about a few minutes ago that Bibbo used. And he analyzes it, and he says his organics are Kryptonian and the metal is Kryptonian. And that, they're leaning hard into this is the real Superman. Now, even as a kid, not knowing what was going to happen with him, I knew that they were not going to make Superman look like this cyborg with the skeleton, half skeleton face and stuff as a permanent thing. That was just too much. I knew that was going to be too overboard. So, but, they're doing everything they can to convince you here that this is going to be the real Superman. And as he's like, yep, it's all proven. Superman is back. And then you get Doomsday and his eye waking up and he's laughing. In 4 weeks, the next chapter of this Superman comes along. All right. Last one of this. The Adventures of Superman. The Metropolis Kid is back. This one is the Superboy. The Connor Kent. We won't call him Connor Kent yet, but that's who it is. And Tom Grummett really does a good job. Grummett reminds me, he has that like early Byrne Austin aesthetic that is like very clean, good dynamic panels, and keeps it interesting, but also light and fun. So why this cab, these guys have like stolen the cab, and we're going to run down this girl. I think it was for some stupid like gang initiation or stuff. I hate when they do stuff like that. Like, run over just for kicks. It's like, who does that? Anyhow, And in this, he takes this kid's like John Lennon style glasses, and that kind of becomes part of his look. And he's a teenage boy. He saves this girl and kisses her as he flies off. He's Superman in my book, even though in some ways he's just a boy. We get Bibbo again, and Bibbo jumps into the water to save this bag of puppies that fell in the lake. I forget why were the puppies in? They were like in a tied bag. She said I couldn't watch them starve. Oh, so she did it because she didn't want to watch them starve, and she's feeling awful about it. She's like, I sent them to a better world, but they're puppies. Like, puppies? And so he dives in and he takes out the puppies. And I think only one of them survived. And it's a white one that he's going to name Krypton. Krypton with an N. Superboy comes to... don't call him Superboy. Superman comes to visit Lois Lane at the Daily Planet. See, this is like, I mean, good backgrounds here. Lots of people in a bustling office. Makes it seem busy. Even like doing like ceiling stuff. I mean, how many artists would just skip that, you know? Good facial expressions. Jimmy over there snapping a picture. Him throwing the paper behind him. So he comes across as very like teenage boy. They do a good job. Well, they do a good job of making him look like a boy too. He looks like a teenager. That's something Grummett does well. And as he's talking to Lois, he sees this woman walk by. And he's like, I'm going to follow her. And I forget why he scoops her up. I think he's wanting to like give you, I think he's like, I'm going to give you an exclusive on me because Lois doesn't like it. Lex with a broken leg down here. I don't know when that happened. There is like a mini series of like Lex Luthor, Metropolis Police or whatever. He must have broke his leg in there somewhere because he didn't have a broken leg in the death or funeral for a friend storylines. And it seems like we saw him just an issue or two ago and he was standing up fine. So now we're at the WGBS, which is a TV station. And I don't know if it's like owned by the same people that own the Planet, the Daily Planet now. But she's there. And she's like, I've got the exclusive of Superboy. And I'm going to be the person that covers Superboy. And they give him like a microphone. And they want to cover him as like, he's almost like their programming. And he buys into it. Pretty good pin up there. I couldn't decide if this is supposed to be Lois or just some random woman. It kind of looks like Lois, like her hair color and stuff, but I don't know. She had blue eyes. I don't really know what color eyes Lois has. She should have brown eyes. So now they're going to follow him around and just watch him like beat up thugs. They get tips and stuff. And it gets to the point where that TV producer, Morgan Edge, who we saw slap Cat Grant's butt earlier, is trying to set stuff up to happen just so Superboy can go intervene. With a spiked bus gets him. This is Steel Hand. Okay. Yeah, I remember this because I was also reading The Fourth World with my kids at this time, and this character Steel Hand is in the Fourth World book, so he's a Kirby character, and they were excited to see that brought into this book. He looks pretty good, too. I'm telling you, Tom Grummett, all of this, the crashing in, grabbing the guns, and he uses his power to, like, blow up the... He's not just smashing them. He's, like, doing something that makes him kind of explode. And he's not even sure how he's doing it. This Superboy is a clone, and he's really just like a week old. So he doesn't even really know how his powers work fully. He takes out Steel Hand pretty quick. This is a nice panel right here, too. Or like the divider of the phone line. Clever idea. Guardian shows up from Cadmus. Guardian, don't try to tell me you're going to drag me back to Project. Not this time. No? Fresh. That's some 90s lingo. Fresh. And he's like, look at this jacket GBS gave me. And Guardian's kind of like, okay, we're going to keep an eye on you, but, behave yourself, more or less, is what he's going to say. It would have been good for him to stick around as maybe a mentor, but he doesn't. And this is them coming to their, like, kind of skeezy arrangement of trying to work on this Morgan Edge, and her name is Tana. Is that Tanya? That's not how I think of it. Or Tana. And then you get Lex Luthor interrogating some dude. What was that about? Okay, so this is a guy that helped clone the body of Lex Luthor so that he could have his, like, son's body. And they have a discussion about cloning Superman. He's like, you said you couldn't do it. He's like, yes, let's talk about that. You told me you couldn't clone Superman. Well, yes and no. Listen, I'll tell you everything. So it's pretty well known that this is a clone. Superboy is a clone of Superman. So you know he's not the real Superman, right? And it's pretty obvious, like, they're building him up to get his own series at the end of this. This one, at this point in the story, you don't know. All I could say is that for me as a kid, I was like, they are not going to make Superman still be this cyborg-looking thing at the end. I mean, I guess if I was trying to really make it stretch, I was like, well, maybe they'll give him some kind of, like, skin covering, like how Luke Skywalker had, like, the fake flesh over his robotic hand at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Maybe they'll give him something like that, and he will be cyborg-like for the foreseeable future. Man of Steel, again, you're kind of like, they're not going to make Superman the black guy now. Like, and he doesn't even have Superman powers. He's just like an Iron Man guy, right? So you're like, this isn't going to be the real Superman. This one is the most likely. He looks like Superman. He went to his tomb and got his body. And one of my kids thought this one was for sure going to be the real Superman. One of my kids liked Man of Steel the best. And one of them liked Superboy the best. And they already knew the outcome of Cyborg. Like I said, unfortunately. So there you have it. The top 5 selling books of 1993. I'm going to continue with the rest of this story in my next video, so stick around for that. Until then, read your comics.